Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, our fireside chat with Michael Milken and Jamie Montgomery will begin momentarily. Please take your seats.
Hi, Mike.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jamie Montgomery and Michael Milken.
Demographics, education, AI, okay?
Okay, which order? That order? Or
Anything you want, it's yours.
Yeah. Mike, are these all your friends? I don't have this many friends.
They're all excited investors in March.
Well, thank you, Mike. We couldn't have done it without you. Mike Milken, it's a special pleasure to have you here again this year. We founded the firm 10 years ago, and Mike was our anchor investor. Gregory has been with us this time, and now he's running a gaming offshoot. But Mike's been there, and Lowell, thank you, Lowell, for all your support and guidance over the years, and his team. And
thank you for the performance, Jamie.
Well, you know, you're welcome. No, a few months ago after Charlie Munger passed away, I called Mike and says, Charlie passed, and he was a great mentor over the last decade. Mike, you've been too, and I just wanted you to know how much we appreciated you.
Thank you, Jamie, and I'm just a little older than Charlie was, that's all.
Yeah, well, I can blame Charlie for my sense of humor. It gets me in trouble sometimes. I think I was becoming Charlie Munger last summer on a road trip to Europe. The Germans don't have my same sense of humor. Yeah. I was in Munich, I was giving a talk, and it says, Mr. Montgomery, you have the two best biotech companies in America in your portfolio. What's your methodology? And I said, well, I don't hire Germans. I thought, oh God, that didn't go down very well. But Jeff von Maltzen's here. I guess he's German, so hey, I thought you would have thought it was funny. But what do you say to someone who says that? We just get out, we hustle, we work, we meet great people, we build relationships with them, we try and do the right thing, and it takes years to build relationships. Charlie always talked about building this a network of trust, and we hope that you can all be part of that. Where with Mike's insights and guidance, we've had this ability to really look critically at the sectors. And today we're going to talk about demographics, education, AI. I think, there's an old adage that, God looks after drunks, fools in the United States of America. And I think we're at one of those moments again with this AI boom in America, which is just incredible. Productivity grew at 2.7% last year, double the norm. Keith Stryer is here from NVIDIA. You look at NVIDIA, what they're doing, in spite of the education system where they had to hire people from in America. NVIDIA encapsulates everything: immigration, education, and AI. And you look at it and you say, it's just driving America. We're leaving China in the dust competitively. We're booming economically. It's lifting the market. It's creating job opportunities. It's creating productivity growth. It's creating economic growth. And have you ever seen anything like this? We've seen cycles before, but is this an unprecedented super cycle, Mike, or are we just getting caught up in the moment?
I think it's a different cycle based on expectation of technology. You spoke about productivity. If you look at productivity today and the increase in the U.S. and its adjustment in the world, and you adjust productivity through countries of the world, and who knows, there might even be a slide coming up on this, but you can see here that Mexico, Korea, South Korea, Japan, those still are, when you measure productivity with cost of labor, that they are still lower. But you can see here that the United States and China have closed dramatically in terms of wages and productivity that you've spoken about. And so there are dramatic changes. But if you go back to places like the 1950s that Lowell and I grew up in, and the enormous feeling of potential opportunity, the show Happy Days, somewhat symbolic of it. We're not there for a lot of reasons, and many of those reasons today are the infatuation with wealth that exists and expectation. But one of the things that's most exciting, and over the years I've put up some slides here showing you that only 26% of people under 30 in the United States think their life is going to be better than their parents. Or how many believe in capitalism, less than 50%, et cetera. But we do these surveys constantly with others for our center. And I just wanted to point out some of the interesting results. When we asked people, are you on the way to living your American dream? And we did it by net worth, we did it by race, we did it by education level, but let's look at it by race in America, and it would be dramatically different. So 77% of Caucasians today believe that they are either on the way or they are there in achieving their American dream. But 74% of blacks in America believe they're on their way to achieving their American dream or have achieved it. Likewise, Hispanics, 71%, and non-white, black Hispanics are 71%. So there isn't a lot of variation by race. There is somewhat of variation by have you achieved it yet. But when you talk to people in the country and ask them, are you on your way to achieving your American dream? More than 70% of the people, no matter what their race, tell you they've either achieved it or they're on their way. And so that's an issue. And I would say, Jamie, as we look at many of the issues that we are addressing, particularly since the massacre of October 7th by Hamas, you see a lot of changes. And I don't think people have really fully understood the change in America because of that. So today there are more people that were born in sub-Saharan Africa than Europe in the United States. So Europe's around 9% of the of the people that weren't born in the United States were born in Europe. In 1960, that number was 75%. And you can see here, more people were born in Africa than in Europe, but almost as many people were born in the Middle East as were born in Europe today. So the change in demographics in the country is so significant today that I don't think we've really focused on it.
Ronnie, can we have this on our conference monitor, same slide by chance? Yeah, thanks.
So it's my view that what investors have not really focused on are the two largest assets that exist in the world. One is human capital, which can move. People can move.
Yeah.
And the second one is social capital. Do you want to move? Do you want to move to another country? And the number of people that want to immigrate, if you look at Latin America in the last 10 years, it's doubled. 37% of the people living in Latin America want to move, most of them to the US. Sub-Saharan Africa, 37% want to move, and that's where the growth in the world's population is. The Middle East, 27%. These people want to be on the move. And I think if I would say what has been the failure of the United States in the last 20 years, it's our immigration policy. So if you haven't noticed, the population of Canada has increased by 50%. They have a very enlightened immigration policy. If you have a business, if you have a college education, if you speak English, you speak French, there's fast track. And if you look at the PISA scores that just came out, they have now Canada ranked as high as 4th or 5th in the world. We can just look in science. And that's this massive immigration that has come in the last generation to Canada. Singapore is first, Japan second, Korea third in science. But overall, today, Singapore is number 1, and number 2 is Korea, and Estonia is number 3 overall today. And the US, you can see where we rank. And if the US had the same immigration policies as Canada, we would have 50 million more people in the US today who are educated, talented, that want to come here. And so when you see what the standards are, and we so underestimate how dependent the United States is on immigration. So your topic today, Jamie, AI, 77% of every single person getting a PhD in AI in the United States was not born in the United States, only 77%. And if you look at AI entrepreneurs here, 75% of these unicorns, their founders, their CEOs were not born in the United States. And if you look at the people in different fields in the United States today, by topic, chemistry, biology, physics, you can just see here, and this is graduate schools, this is masters, etc. Only 82% of people in petroengineering in the United States in a graduate degree were not born, only 82. Electrical engineering, 74, and so on. And so the US is totally dependent on immigration in many ways today for innovation, AI, etc. And we have not adjusted to the fact that you can see today what countries did most of these unicorns come from? Number 1, India. Number 2, Israel. And as you step back and think about these, there are trillions and trillions of dollars of human capital that want to come to the United States. So when you talk about competing with China or other countries, the number one thing the U.S. has going for it is social capital.
Right.
The idea, and we have not let people in, and then those graduate students, if they can't find the right job, we ask them to leave.
Yeah. All right, so what would you, so demography is destiny. All right, so we agree on that point. What is?
Well, it's not necessarily destiny if you have immigration.
Yeah,
Okay?
true. Okay.
So the U.S. has the lowest birth rate.
So the last 50 years, without immigration, we would have zero population growth in America.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
All right. So let's look at what about China? Talk about China.
Good. Well, let's go look at China. So China and Korea have something in common. Both of them at one time, the average woman had 6 children. 6 children average per woman. Today, China is
I can't
now,
imagine that was very pleasant, but hey.
well, you wanted to have you wanted to increase your population.
This is only 55% of the who plan to have women in America, only 55%. This is amazing.
And if you looked at Japan, women
42.
born between 1960 and 1990, 50% of those will never have a child.
Yeah.
Never have a child. And so you have these enormous shifts occurring, and you find 3 things generally occur. The more educated women are, the less children you have. As your wealth increases, and the book Factfulness focused, and it wasn't even extreme wealth. If wealth got above $2,000 to $3,000 per capita, the number of children dropped. And the third factor was at the level of other opportunities for women. As they increased, the number of children dropped. And so you're looking at a world that has changed so dramatically, with most of the developed world below replacement. So at one time, 80% of the world's economy was in the US, Europe, and Japan. 20% of the population, 80% of the economy. Today, that's around 40% of the world's economy and dropping. And so what I'm saying to you is the big differential the US has is not AI. It's the social capital of the country. And the fact that people not too many people are lined up to go to China today.
Yeah.
A recent survey showed 60% of everyone worth more than $1 million would like to leave. And 2/3 to the US, 1/3 to Europe. And not too many people lined up to go to Russia, Iran, or other countries today. So we are not taking advantage of our greatest opportunity.
All right.
And that to me is a challenge. And
Do you
likewise,
have a chart on the China demographics?
Sure, let's throw China up.
Yeah, let's
Jamie's very demanding here.
Hey, because I think China's even overstating their population. I think they're going to like half a baby per head.
Well, look at this slide.
Yeah.
Okay, in 23, China reported that there were 7,880,000 births.
Yeah.
Then they said, no, it wasn't 7.8, it was 9. The time before, when it was 9, they said it was 10. So we don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact is, when you look at an historical chart here of going from 6 children to 1, another way to look at this is you have a number of people that you've backed in India. Let's look at India versus China, kind of a demographic chart. So there are more than 200 million people. So you can see here, almost 2.5 children are born in India for every child born in China. And who knows, but in 24, it's possible Nigeria is going to pass China in number of children.
Yeah.
Nigeria already has 20 million more children. So when you say, okay, let's look at the world today, there were more children in 22 born in Nigeria than all of Europe, Russia, Iceland, all combined by almost 2 million. There were more born in Nigeria by more than 2 million than all of North America and all of South America, etc. So Nigeria is projected by the UN to have more people by the end of the century than China. Now, the 5th highest academic performing students in the United States were those born in Nigeria.
Wow.
So I would say to you that, you know, I'm constantly lectured there's more entrepreneurs in Nigeria than the US, and most of their great entrepreneurs want to come to the United States. So there's a lot of changes. I don't think investors fully understand, and if you need to get it to understand it from an investment standpoint, you can buy rural cities in Japan for less than $500,000 because 2 people die for every 1 born for the last generation, and the young people don't want to live in rural areas. So you have cities today where almost no one is living there. And that's happening in parts of Europe, et cetera. And so I think understanding this strength here, you can see what people are doing. Here's a company in South Korea that's paying employees $75,000 to have a kid, okay? And another one's paying you almost $25,000 to have a child. So there are a lot of incentives, and they're building resorts in South Korea now, no one under 21 allowed.
Yeah. I actually think that's a great idea. Why not? I mean, not the resort. I mean, the bonus.
Jamie, how many kids do you have?
4.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
but I think paying a bonus for having kids, why not? I mean, Samat, should we do that? You know, it's a little late for us, but I mean, you know, what the hell? I mean, you know.
I'd like to.
It's a better use of money than most of them. You know.
Jamie, I'd like to go back to one of the panels you had before that was so powerful. I don't know if the audience fully understood the power, and that was in biotech.
Yeah.
And your decision to invest in those companies.
Yeah.
In 1993, one of the leading scientist clinicians in the world was a young man named Jonathan Simons that worked at Johns Hopkins, later was the first head of the Cancer Center in Atlanta, founded by the family that founded Coca-Cola, and then led our Prostate Cancer Foundation for 14 years, and today runs Bernie Marcus's medical foundation. A $5,000 machine today can do 5 million times as much in one day as Jonathan Simons could in gene editing and coding in '93. $5,000, 5 million times the output. And the idea, and one of our Milken scholars at the University of Texas is building a human being in a computer today so that you can use this as a model to test what happens in a computer, as you've heard previously. And I have pointed out every year almost, so I don't want to miss the opportunity this year, Jamie, that more than 50% of all economic growth in the last 200 years is due to public health and medical research.
Yeah.
So when you have those companies or others that exist today that are going to be 1 billion times faster, be able to do things.
Those are 2 very special companies, Generate and Tesaro, and Jeff was the co-founder of both of them. And, you know, it's Jensen from NVIDIA's, NVIDIA invested as Amgen as well with us in Generate, and I believe you'll see a 60 Minutes episode soon on NVIDIA, and they'll, Jensen wanted to go visit.
So I don't want to disappoint you and not show a slide on NVIDIA.
Yeah. You know, I went and visited NVIDIA with Ashish, who was up here speaking earlier. He's a rock star there. They wanted his autograph. They brought out his paper and autographed it, and you know, I mean, this is an incredible company.
This is a sobering thought for as an investor here. In one day, the increase in the value of NVIDIA was multiples of the value of Warner Brothers Discovery, who has one of the largest or the largest storehouse of content in the world. It's 9 times the stock, but if I took the whole enterprise value, They grew in one day, and it's grown a lot faster since. The entire value of a company with the largest storehouse of entertainment content in the world, 3 times its enterprise value.
It still might be early here too. Is Keith, are you here, Keith from NVIDIA? Keith Stryer?
But
so one of the things that they're doing is they're building, there's only about a dozen countries in the world that have their own, sovereign AI, and most countries are going to want it. And it's a real challenge. What does India do? What do some of these countries do? They're going to be dependent on foreign countries. And I think this is still very early. This could be quite a bit bigger company still. I mean, I hate to talk about the stock price, but I think in terms of addressable market, this is a massive play still in terms of what infrastructure is going to be required. I mean, I think you look at it and you say, okay, there could be 20 million jobs in America that are replaced with automation in the next 10 years or so at about $200,000 each, these jobs. And that's like $4 trillion. Now, half of that will go to the tech companies, and half of that will be in cost savings to the companies. And you think, how does that play through the economy? And now, I don't think that actually destroys human capital, because a lot of those people are ready to retire or move on to their next thing in life. There's probably 10 million government jobs that can be automated, and most of these jobs are kind of mindless, soulless. People haven't showed up for work in 4 years anyway in Washington. I mean, it's nuts, right? But I think this is still very early in this whole thing. You'll hear about it 1 o'clock here. McKinsey will show you this really interesting study on this. I think this isn't late. This is still early, and I think this is. But Mike, you talk about human capital. Let's put a number on human capital, because everyone talks about the debt. We all know what that is. It's silly. 34 trillion, a trillion every 100 days. That's a bad thing. But what?
Well, $1 billion a year in interest, trillion a year in interest is a bad thing. And if it went up 1%, that's another 340 billion a year.
Yeah, it's bad. But what's
human capital estimate 1,500 trillion in the U.S.
1,500 trillion. So that's really our biggest.
So our debt is 2%
of that
valuation.
So the most important asset is human capital, and you think we could add to that another 20% with a proper immigration policy, or 30%?
Yep. So, well, if you look at Israel.
Yeah.
When the Iron Curtain came down and the movement out of Soviet Union, almost 1 million people to Israel. Israel became, at that point in time, not today, but the most educated country in the world. So you transferred trillions of dollars out of the Soviet Union to Israel, Europe, the United States. Russia, Soviet Union tried to figure out a tax that if you were educated, got your PhDs there and things, should you have to pay a tax? And that's why when you think of the U.S. policies of our graduate students, that we're going to force you to leave, we're potentially going to export trillions of dollars of human capital. It is so absurd. And when you see the enormous challenges and failures of our K-12 system today, as you might have noticed, and as Lowell pointed out to me, at the end of 22, we're here in Los Angeles. LA announced that their grades are now higher than they were prior to COVID. And then people began to look at their test scores and notice their test scores are an all-time low, grades are an all-time high. And as a result, you have parts of California now you cannot get a D or an F, okay? That you can get an I in complete, but you cannot get a D or an F any longer. And you had Culver City, which has a lot of tech in it, just announced they're eliminating honors English because it's racist. And you had
so is algebra. Yeah.
Well, algebra.
The Egyptians are complaining. They don't get enough credit.
They already attacked algebra, Jamie, by saying you should not be able to take algebra until high school. Taking it in middle school is racist. Now, in India, where they're 2 years ahead of us in mathematics in school, you just imagine telling that really talented 7th grader, sorry, you can't take algebra because it's races in America, but if you went to Canada, you could take algebra or some other country.
Yeah, it's, well, Mike would point out that we're in the bottom quartile in every educational category in California except self-esteem. So, yeah. So maybe all these students will grow up to be venture capitalists. Self-esteem doesn't seem to be a problem.
So, Jamie, if you ran for public office,
yeah, that'd be a bad idea.
After you finish Fun 8,
yeah,
you know, the U.S., if you think we're a leader now, if we only would change our immigration policies,
immigration would.
There would be really no country that could compete with us.
None.
Because the best and brightest in so many countries of the world would like to come here, and obviously they want to come here because they believe in the ideal of the American dream.
Yeah.
They believe that America is a meritocracy, and so hopefully our efforts in Washington with our center, that America will remain a meritocracy. But
Mike, it's incredible what you're doing there. We'll touch on that. I think this productivity growth is so important. Reagan's view was 2% productivity growth, 20 years, you double the income of every individual in the country. 2% over 20 years, that's a 2x. And we did it between 1980 and 2000. And then we've had some slippages and income inequality.
So you can see on this chart here, the outliers are South Korea, an amazing differential in productivity adjusted by labor, and Mexico. And so it's hard for China to compete with Mexico today, and almost every automobile manufacturer in the United States and the world has facilities in Mexico.
We get back on this issue, productivity growth, immigration, we just dominate. And then you could adjust, get the taxes up a bit, moderate spending, and we could take care of this deficit.
Is that your platform?
That is my platform. Every candidate I give money to, it's a death knell for them. But so, all right. So one would predict we're going to have a recession, but it's an election year, so there's absolutely zero chance of a recession this year. It just seems, but there's some stuff going on. A year ago, we sat here and we were both really queasy about commercial banking, and the next day, Silicon Valley Bank had a really awkward conference call and collapsed. What worries you? I mean, we had this M2 increase, 40%. It's coming down, but we seem to be kind of managing this, soft landing. I think one of the things is there's more women in the workforce, who are working remote, and that's kept unemployment down. There's some very interesting statistics going on. What's your outlook for this year, and what's kind of a potential black swan? I mean, last year was kind of all right. The commercial banks are they borrowed long and really stupidly, and they got in trouble. Is the commercial lending, the real estate lending bother you? What worries you when you look at this situation right now?
I think one, as we discussed last year, the idea that you would borrow overnight and lend intermediate or long.
Yeah.
There was not one bank in Texas that survived the 1980s independent, not one, and due to a number of factors. And so, though many people were just borrowing and short and lending intermediate or long, but that's pretty much run through the system. I think the real estate is still early in the system of what we're going to see in real estate from this standpoint. I have a friend that's relatively wealthy. He spends very little time in California.
Less than 6 months a year?
No, he probably 2.
Okay.
And I asked him, so why are you a California resident? He told me, well, he's got 12 houses in California, and he probably have to get rid of a few of them. But I think the challenge in office and what we're going to do here is with us. and the recycling and the fact that you had people buying apartments at 2 3/4 or 3 cap rates. Then we have a lot of building, and so it takes a while to run through the system, but when you stop building for the next 3 or 5 years, then they will come back. So I still think you're seeing that, and you saw that with the bank in New York recently with their commercial lending. So I think there's more of that coming out. I do think the question of debt, it isn't just borrowing. You have administration that wants to forgive $1 trillion in student loans. I'm assuming that's heavily tied to the election.
You think?
If I forgive 40 million people's loans, if you vote for me, it isn't that blatant.
There was a mayor of Naples who would send voters one shoe, and if they voted for him, he'd send them the other shoe. That was a little less subtle, I think. Yeah.
So I think the issue here, right now, the average yield on the government debt's around 3% on 34, so it's around $1 trillion. 1%, sucking another 300 to 400 billion out of the economy. And I think you're correct. There's just no chance that you're not going to be pumping money out in an election year.
Yeah.
But the question is, when will the government decide that they're not going to operate at $1 trillion deficits at full employment?
Yeah, which is just insane historically.
So I think that is potentially a risk, and if that couples, you'll have to tie up with the Fed and drop interest rates at the same time. Which will support real estate. To me, the biggest risk we have is the failure of the education of our system in the United States as it exists today, and our dependence on foreign people coming here to drive our educated activities. And so we have this social capital advantage today. And if you look at where the people in the world being born, they're basically being born in South Asia and in Sub-Saharan Africa. That's where they're being born. And you can see India, Pakistan here, Bangladesh, and so on.
Yeah, but they come here for the American dream, don't they? I mean, the Vietnamese believe it, the Nigerians believe it, more so than the Americans.
So what is the greatest risk? The greatest risk is that we don't remain a society of a meritocracy. And we don't give you an opportunity based on your ability, from that. So this is a look here today. The probability of a child born to parents in the lowest income reaches the highest income in their lifetime. And you can see what this immigration has occurred in Canada. And you might remember when they were doing all the tech layoffs, Jamie. In end of 22, et cetera. Canada offered a fast-track visa to every single person in technology that was being laid off by Google or Facebook or somebody. So besides all the other problems Canada has, and now, they're discovering that they put a tax in Vancouver on purchases of real estate, et cetera. But we have the greatest asset here, and that is this ideal of upward mobility based on your ability, and maybe the only country where you have a chance to try, fail, and have a chance again.
All right, Mike, one last question. You've always lived and worked with great purpose. Cancer cure, the American dream, education, revolutionizing finance. We talk about building meaningful companies. A number of entrepreneurs here who were thinking about their being successful and their legacy. Can you give a little bit of perspective or even advice or about as you think about your legacy and how you're thinking about that's evolved over the last couple decades?
Well, it isn't just the last couple decades. I mean, Lowell and I decided more than 40 years ago of the concern on education. He's taken the lead there. I think you have to decide what world you want your kids to grow up in. You want your grandkids or your great-grandkids to grow up in. And Americans greatly underestimate the importance of America. Whether you're in South Africa, Zambia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, wherever you are in the world, Iran, you dream about the ideals that America has. And when you look at how people feel about the American dream, and all of Africa, most of the Middle East today, South Asia, Southeast Asia, they truly believe that this ideal of upward mobility based on your ability, not who your parents were, where you were born, whether you're a man or a woman or any other factor, is what the United States stands for. And so people around the world, the United States is more important to them, unfortunately today, Jamie, than people in the U.S. today. And so to me, what I worry, and I think every single person should be worried about, is what type of a world are your children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren going to grow up in? And I'm telling you right now, if you don't have the United States, you're going to grow up in a substantially different world, no matter where you are on the planet. And if might makes right, then we don't know what this planet is going to look like. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to break the bad news today, but it's at least 100 years before we're going to be able to go to the next star system. Yuri Milner is estimating we'll know if there's a planet in the next closest star
we got to make this one
within
work.
40 years.
Yeah.
But there isn't any other place you can go.
So when can we come visit the Center for the American Dream in Washington with our kids and grandkids?
The fourth quarter this year, but we'll be totally open for the March conference next year. And who knows? Maybe one year we'll have the March conference there.
I think that's an excellent idea.
But I'm saying, I just think if there's any message today, it's the protection of the values that this country was founded on, that it's a meritocracy, that you have a chance, no matter where you were born, who your parents are, what you went to school, if you have a new idea, a good idea, that you have that opportunity and that you have certain moral rights. And I cannot express enough to everyone here that if you lose them here, you will lose them on the entire planet.
Yeah.
And so we are the hope of the planet, and most people around the world wish we could get our act together.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's great. That's so important.